Welcome to the Talon Talks podcast from Embry Riddle Aeronautical University. I'm Alan Caesar. My guest today is Nishigandha Kelkar. She is an integrated product lead at Collins Aerospace, where she's part of a team integrating the first ever touchscreen cockpit displays on commercial Boeing aircraft. She is also the founder of Project LaunchPad, an organization that focuses on student mental health awareness as well as democratizing knowledge for pursuing higher education. She graduated summa cum laude from the Daytona Beach campus in 2017 with a bachelor's in aerospace engineering, and in 2021 with a master's in management from Embry Riddle Worldwide. Nishi, thank you so much for joining us today and participating in our rocket launch-themed program.
My pleasure, Alan. Thank you for having me.
All right. So we're going to start with the pre-launch. We're at T-4 questions. Are you buckled in?
I am. Let's do it.
All right. Well, what was your favorite place to spend leisure time when you were a student?
All right. So I think as an aerospace engineering student, leisure is studying.
Yeah, well, you got a 4.0, so I imagine you spent a lot of time doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's definitely going to sound like a nerd, but the library was my favorite place to hang out. So was Lehman, that's the College of Engineering lab, and the College of Business lab. And we almost had a ritual, like we'd start at the library, and then once it would close at 12 a.m., would go to the College of Engineering lab that would close at 1 a.m., and then go to the College of Business, which was open all night. So yeah, those are my favorite spots, I think.
That's great. That's a really cool routine. So is there a particular song that takes you back to when your Embry Riddle days, whenever you hear it?
Yeah, I think Don't Panic by Coldplay. That song talks about how you've got to stay resilient through times and kind of still maintain that positivity even though things may not be going your way. So yeah, I think it was something that gave me a lot of strength during those times.
That's great. Now you've already mentioned these late nights. What was your sort of go-to late night meal or snack?
Yeah, Einstein's, I think, because we'd I think all the other spots would close a little earlier, maybe around 9 p.m. or so. So we'd be left with vending machines, and then Einstein's was open until 12 a.m. or 1 a.m. So we'd try to make sure that we reach there in time to grab a snack before it closes. Else, we're just left with Pop-Tarts and energy drinks from vending machines after that.
What class or professor had the longest lasting impact on you?
Yeah, a lot of amazing courses and professors at Riddle. I think one that stood out was Dr. Leishman while I was pursuing aerodynamics, that's AE301. And he was very passionate about, just I think the way he taught and the way he really introduced us to these new concepts, right? For instance, the concept of air flowing over a wing really got him excited, and that's Embry Riddle for you, right? Because it's people who are extremely passionate about aviation and aerospace and here just to do that. So I think his course really stuck with me for the longest times. Also, probably because it was building upon a foundation in physics, something that I truly loved, and also I think just the fact that looking at his passion for the subject really got me hooked onto it as well.
Well, now we're going to move on to our ignition and our launch burn.
All right.
So at Collins, you're integrating these touchscreen cockpit displays into the Boeing 777X and 787. And I know a bit about glass cockpits and where all the traditional instruments are just shown on electronic display screens. But what you're doing is moving some of the actual physical controls to a touchscreen. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, so we've had glass cockpits for a while now. Like we had them on the 787 as well. And what we're trying to do here for the first time is bring that touch capability to the glass cockpit. And this is really because we have pilots using iPads to do flight planning. We've seen touchscreen in that aspect, and then they're bringing that to the cockpit. So I think it's only intuitive then to have your actual display be touchscreen as well. But I really like the fact that we're making the transition slowly but surely, because we do have rotary knobs as well that you can use to move through the pages, to click on apps, and then there's of course the touchscreen feature to help them get acclimated with this new technology on the cockpit.
So what kind of controls are being, what are you able to do by touching the screen?
Yeah, so you're able to move through the different pages. So if, for instance, you have the maintenance page, if I click on maint, then I can see the health status of the various controls. If I click on the system synoptics page, I can see an entire sheet of flight controls. So how much are my flaps deployed? What's my trim like? All that information. If I look at the PFD and the MFD, that's the primary flight display. We have touchscreen options there as well. Again, going through different pages like the engine indication system that shows you that shows you the crew alerting messages. It shows you at what altitude you are, so the cabin pressurization. And then if you go down and then again do some touch screen for different pages, then you can see the system synoptics, which will give you an in-depth information about what your pressurization is like. FMS, another big thing, the flight management system, you can just touch and then you can enter what your weight of the aircraft is going to be, and then really understand how much fuel is required. I think at the core of it, it's trying to make it more intuitive so that if you want to go to a particular page, you just go and click there instead of having to maybe like use a dial to move onto that page. So yeah, a lot of touching around to see the different pages, I think, is at the bottom of it.
So these are informational screens is what it sounds like. You're not actually integrating like flight controls. Nobody's adjusting throttle on a touch screen, right?
Correct. Yes, this is just informational. And I think it's one step at a time is kind of like the approach we're taking.
So is there, do the screens give, sometimes on your phone, when you're typing, it'll vibrate a little bit and you get that like tactile feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys integrating that, or does that not make sense when you're reaching out and touching a screen in front of you?
Yeah, so there are two kinds of displays. One is the resistive and the other is the capacitive. So the resistive one is where it really captures onto that touch after you apply pressure. So it's a different technology, and that is helpful because in flight you're going to be experiencing turbulence, so you don't want it to be sensitive to touch. So it's only after I really press it for a longer duration, like a little longer, relatively, that's when it's going to catch on to that touch feature.
Okay, so avoid, accidentally pressing on it when you don't mean to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned the rotary knob. Is that sort of like a redundant backup? Because I know, like, actually my phone right now, like, is having issues with its touch screen, and I can't, like, there's a dead spot.
Yeah.
And so is that what the rotary knob is for, in case something happens?
And also I think to help pilots transition onto the touchscreen technology. I think rotary knobs is something we've been using for the longest time. I see it in the Cessna 172 I fly as well. So it's always good to have that familiarity as well as some new technology whenever you're trying to roll that out.
So are you a pilot as well?
I have been flying, and thanks to Riddle, that's when my passion for aviation truly started. I remember one of my friends who was with me in these organizations. He was preparing to be an airline pilot, and he took me on one of these flights, and yeah, that I loved it. There was no looking back since then. So I have been flying for a few hours on the right seat mostly, but I definitely plan to get my licenses soon.
That's great. That's great. Sorry for the diversion there. But also, you mentioned Cessnas, and like, so our training planes now, all our Cessnas have state of the art glass
Hmm.
cockpits. Do you think it's practical for this touchscreen technology to sort of trickle down to from large commercial aircraft to these training planes like these?
Uh, so I definitely see a lot of safety added through, the inclusion of this technology. Like, let's talk about synthetic vision. Let's talk about weather terrain overlays. Let's talk about just crew alerting messages that pop up and inform the pilot of anything that may be going wrong. Let's talk about TCAS, right? Telling you about the relative velocity of an oncoming aircraft. And I think having all these technologies in the cockpit is eventually enhancing the safety of the pilot. So I think when I look at it from that perspective, it absolutely, I think, adds on to the experience of flying.
So as integration lead, you're regularly working with Boeing on how these systems meet their requirements.
Yeah.
What's been sort of like what's been the hardest part of this so far, most challenging requirement that you've had to meet?
Yeah. So I think with doing anything new, like bringing touchscreen first time on Boeing commercial aircraft, there are definitely regulatory concerns that you would like to meet, and that's something we've been working hand in hand with Boeing towards. Um, and I think from a technical standpoint, it's also the technology, the fact that we're first time bringing this capability to touch through different pages. So there's a lot of verification efforts involved as well to make sure that that technical capability has gone through in every scenario. So we offer the moving maps capability. So just to give an example, we put the aircraft at different locations, taking off from different airports, and make sure that the airport map is adequately responding to those situations. So there's a lot of verification involved as well, and I think all of that is done with the ultimate goal of making sure that we meet the regulatory concerns and we make sure that the technology is seamless, even though it's the first time we're doing it.
So now, if I understand correctly, you went to high school in Muscat in the country of
Yeah.
Oman, which for our listeners who might not know, it's on the southeast coast of the Arabian Peninsula next to the United Arab Emirates and Saudi
Hmm.
Arabia. And so did I get all that
You
right? Am I
did. You
right?
did. I'm impressed.
Okay. I looked it up in advance. I'll be honest. Um, so at your high school, you were given a Best Debater Award by the Ambassador of India to Oman. So tell me, this sounds fantastic. Is it like a giant novelty thing? I'm picturing like somebody getting one of those novelty checks or something. Like that's how exciting it seems to me.
Right.
But it's probably a very different experience for you.
Not very far from that. It's a huge trophy. Um, yeah. And it was very heavy. I think we had like three people who had to stand together
Oh
to
my
carry
gosh.
it. But it was a very fun experience. And I think I vividly remember the topic of that debate competition as well. It was talking about peace or prosperity. Which one would you choose if you were given a chance? So fun times.
That's really interesting. I don't normally think of those as at odds with each other, peace and prosperity. Do you think they generally are? Is that I'm a little bit curious about that topic now.
Right. Yeah, I think it goes back to the fact that you can amass huge wealth, you can become a millionaire or billionaire, but if you're not having peace of mind, then is it worth it? On the other hand, if you have a peace of mind and if you are living your life the way you want to, for instance, but you don't have enough wealth to support it, then is that good enough, or you're going to still want to be prosperous, to lead a better life? So I think it's along those lines. It's, I think, at the bottom of it, kind of talking about on one end of the spectrum being wealthy versus on the other end of the spectrum, you know, doing with what you have, and comparing those two perspectives.
So I'm curious about the culture in some of the countries in that region. I don't know about Oman specifically, but some of them tend to be less supportive of women working in engineering fields and in technical fields. Now, you had a lot of academic success in high school, but it sounds like you're involved in the Model UN and in more of these sort of political roles like student council president. What did people say when you said you wanted to be an aerospace engineer?
Yeah, and I really owe the credit to my parents. So they have been relentlessly supportive all throughout. And I think the personality that I've developed today is all because of them. So I remember back when I was in high school, I was doing really great in academics, like you mentioned. Math and physics were my passion, and I was very clear that I wanted to pursue aerospace, and my parents didn't blink an eye. In fact, my dad stayed up with me working through admissions and the admission process. He supported me in every way he could, and I think it really goes back to them. That's not to say that there wasn't pushback. There were definitely people who reached out to him. Like, one specific person told him that, hey, are you sure you want to invest so much? She's probably going to marry off and not contribute to your wealth later on. So are you really sure you want to do that? And that's when I saw my father get up and walk out, and he said, you're going to watch her become a famous aerospace engineer one day. So keep that in mind. So I really have to thank them for it. They were very determined to give me every opportunity that I asked for. And it's because of that that whether it's a debating competitions, for instance, where I gain the opportunity to develop an opinion and to really get in front of people and speak, to develop the confidence to be able to do that. So I think if you provide the right opportunities early on, it really helps develop a personality. And definitely with their support all throughout, I was able to come here.
So Muscat is like a 20-hour flight from here. Why did you choose to go, past half the world and come to Embry Riddle? And did you bring that giant trophy?
I wish I would have, but I think my high school wanted to keep it with them. So if you ever do visit them, you'll see it stored in one of the show as one of the showpieces there. Yeah, I think aviation and aerospace is a field that is best realized in America. That's definitely a realization that I had while growing up. Like, look at Oshkosh, right? Look at the latest developments. Look at the best companies. Look at the kind of advancements that Boeing is doing. That Collins, that Honeywell, that Garmin are doing. So it's really the country to come to if you want to experience working in the aviation aerospace industry.
Now, so me personally, I was born in Brazil and I moved to the US when I was not yet a teenager. And so there was some adjustment for me, but a lot of this is sort of societal norms I feel like are really set when you're like in middle school and high school. And so the culture shock for you coming to college, at that age, I barely even knew who I was. And, maybe you had a stronger sense of self than I did, but I imagine that was really tough for you. How was that transition?
It was rough. Yeah, it was definitely rough. And I think small things like, I think just adjusting to the climate, for instance, adjusting to the fact, for me that I was now staying so far away from my family that even if I wanted to go and meet them, they were like halfway around the globe, 20 hours away. So that was huge. And then I think the third part to it was also the dietary restrictions that I had. So I'm a vegetarian, and there were days I would just eat bread with lettuce and ketchup and tomatoes, and that was it. Coming from having warm home cooked meals from my mother to in a month now having to maybe, I don't know, survive on granola bars or something. So yeah, I think that was a big switch as well. So yeah, it was definitely tough, and I think that too coming at a very young age. For me, it was 17 years young when I decided to move here, and I actually recollect the very time when it kind of struck me that this was happening. So my parents they were gracious enough to come all the way to drop me off to college, and I bid them farewell. Like this was right next to that Einstein's corner in the student village, and I bid them farewell, and I saw their car go away, and then I just stood there, like I froze, and it struck me that, oh my God, now I am by myself, and through the next 4 years or so. So yeah, it is quite a big change.
Yeah. So that was that experience sort of adjusting. Is that what led you to create Project LaunchPad?
Absolutely, yes. That was definitely one of the driving factors. Because from a first-hand experience, I felt that it's great to be celebrating successes. Like, for instance, for me, it was the fact that I was doing really well academically here. I was, the president of so many student organizations, co founded two. But at the bottom of it, there were some definite think moments of self-doubt that I had. There were definite periods where I felt low because you don't always perform the best in courses. You don't always get the internships or the opportunities that you're wanting. So I think I really wanted us to have conversation about how we navigate through those low times. Because as much as it is important for us to celebrate the successes, I think it's also very much needed for us to talk about how we can make it through the times when things are not working out as you expected them to.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about what Project Launchpad does then in order to help people.
Absolutely. So there are three core areas that have been picked up. The first one is student mental health awareness. And this one is talking about exactly what we covered so far. For instance, if you're moving away from family, and the move can be however far away, it could be 8,000 miles, it could be 50 miles. But just the fact that you're moving away, how do you adjust to this new atmosphere? How do you kind of navigate your way through this time? Talking about dealing with relationships, talking about developing emotional intelligence. So we provide content in that space. And the second is financial mentoring. So as we know, college debt is a huge concern, and it's unfortunately that one thing that can stop you from pursuing your dreams, even when you're really sure about what you want to do. So we want to be providing authentic, backed by research information about what you can do to get financially healthy, how you can afford college, how you can invest and save enough for the next phase of your life. And the third pillar is career counseling. And again, we're taking a unique approach at this one because it's no longer just about how do I write a statement of purpose or how do I get my letter of recommendation. It is about answering the deeper questions about how do I find purpose in life. Or like a question that I faced was, I am extremely passionate about aviation and aerospace, but understandably there are certain citizenship requirements for certain positions, certain companies. So how do I navigate through that? I don't want to leave on to my passion, but at the same time, I still want to pursue, um, uh, this further. So I think that aspect of career counseling, which is really getting down to the deeper topics and helping students navigate through that.
So how is this content? So you say you provide content. How is this provided? Are these webinars? Is this like a repository?
Mhm. Yeah. So a part of them is in a format that's very easily accessible by the student, and that's Instagram, because I know we're scrolling through Instagram most of our day, and we're actively present there. So it's in the form of reels currently, because I think that's what's trending. That's what is the best way to get the message out. We also have posts where we talk about the do's and the don'ts, where we kind of break down the complex information into bite-sized pieces that students can just save and revisit at a later time. Then we have Instagram live sessions, which have turned out to be great because we take on live questions from students. We have renowned psychologists come in, like just tomorrow, we're going to have someone from London join us and talk about how we can take care of our mental health during the pandemic. So we're using that platform to drive really meaningful conversations, again, around topics that are directly impacting students. And then we're hoping to soon launch our courses in, again, these three areas. So topics like how do you develop emotional intelligence, stuff that's not necessarily taught to us to the traditional education system, but something that if we know will then help us study better, be better at work, be a better fiance, or be a better daughter, and so on.
Yeah. So I imagine that if the content that is currently up is on Instagram Live, then people can access a lot of this for free already then.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's something we're going to stick with for the longest time, is to provide a majority of our content for free, and then to provide some paid content through the launch of our website later on.
Okay. Now, I guess being on Instagram, it's global and it's virtual, and you said you bring in experts, so you're not teaching these yourself.
Right. Yeah, I would love to talk to students about aviation, aerospace, any topics, along those lines. But I think when it comes to mental health awareness, we have psychologists come in. When we talk about financial mentoring, we have like a senior partner from this finance firm come in. And then when we're talking about career counseling, again, we're referring to people who are experts in their field, like maybe the country head for marketing come in and talk about pursuing that stream, kind of job opportunities there, and so on. So we do tap into experts to seek that advice.
Now, some people don't feel necessarily comfortable either talking with others about their feelings or admitting that they're having them. I know, like, I struggle with that sometimes, and I'll realize earlier this week, like I had a morning where I like sort of had a realization that I've been suppressing a lot of my feelings about a particular thing. I haven't seen my friends. Some of my friends have moved away, and I haven't seen them in quite a while. And that kind of, I had a rough morning because it was, something that I sort of remembered and realized that I'd been suppressing. But what would you say to someone who maybe feels like they can't handle these issues alone, but is hesitant to participate in something or to admit that they need help? How do you encourage somebody to come and, seek out help like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for asking that. So we're also hoping to provide one-on-one counseling sessions and to make it completely safe and secure. And I think that goes back to the point that really providing help on a one-on-one basis might help, and also ensuring that there is privacy maintained, that it's really at the end of the day catered to just helping that person and nothing other than that. So I think that offering is something that I'm hoping resonates, and I'm not honestly equipped with the knowledge to kind of talk about this. But if for instance, if it were a friend of mine, and if I were just to speak to him or her, then that is something I would say is, I can provide you a list of people whom you could reach out to on a one-on-one basis and see if that helps as a starting point.
All right. Well, so now we're solidly in orbit. So I've
All
got
right.
two more questions for you, and then we'll take a break before the splashdown.
Okay.
So uh, we've hit the heavy stuff. We've hit the heavy stuff. What skills do you think are critical to succeeding in your line of work?
Sure. So are we talking about engineering here or
Yeah, at Collins there.
yeah. I think resilience is important because, especially when you're in a technical role, you're going to be out in the lab um, trying a lot of different things which don't always work. And, Murphy's Law.
Yeah, that's if anything can go wrong, it will go
Correct.
wrong.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, I think you've got to stay resilient through it. And I think in a lot of ways, Riddle helped me with that as well. Just taking such an intensive course like aerospace engineering helps you develop that resilience. So yeah, when you do take up technical fields, like if you're a software, if you're a person who writes software, you know this very well that when you compile your code, it's not going to just start running in the first try. You're going to have to go back and edit syntax somewhere.
Mhm.
Maybe redo a certain structure somewhere else. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think when you see it all come together, that's definitely a moment of accomplishment. So
Oh
yeah,
my God, I can't begin to count the number of times I've went chasing for a missing
right.
semicolon.
Semicolons are the worst. Yes, agreed.
So, if you could go back in time and give your younger self, one piece of advice, what would it
Hmm.
be?
Yeah, I'd want to tell myself that it's going to all work out. It's going to be fine, because it I guess at least in how I felt, I've kind of been cautious of making mistakes. I've wanted to have things go right from the beginning, but I think it's great to make mistakes. I think it's great to fail. I think it's great to, you know. Not be able to do something the way you expected it to, because that's when you learn. I think in those moments of failure is when you really understand what you can do better. And then when you bounce back and then when you continue performing, I think then that's a story we can talk about. So I tell myself to keep going and not be afraid of anything.
All right, great. So now it's time for our break, and we'll be right back with the splashdown.
Awesome.
Homecoming returns this year with a full week of in person and virtual events. October West launches the week in Prescott, Arizona, starting September 30th, and the Homecoming Alumni Fly In Daytona Beach splashes down on the weekend of October 8th and 9th. We'll have 5 days of virtual events in between, including a virtual career expo for alumni from across the globe. You can expect everything you know of Embry Riddle Homecoming: networking events, live entertainment, lab tours, and fun activities for Eagles and future Eagles of all ages. Visit alumni.erau.edu/homecoming for a full schedule of events and register today. All right, Nishi, it's time for our 5 splashdown questions. Are you
I
ready?
am. Let's do it.
If you could fly any plane ever made to any destination, what would it be?
Great question, but also very difficult one. I love my 172.
Yeah?
I think it's the only plane I need. Uh, it helps me go from one place to another, hop on between airports, just refuel, and you're back up again. So I think I'm happy with it for
Yeah.
now.
Good. Keep it
Right.
simple. Yeah. So, what's a book that's been really important or influential for you?
Yeah. So Zero to One by Peter Thiel is a book that really stuck with me. And I think also probably the time when I was reading it was around when I was graduating and thinking of starting something like Project LaunchPad, for the welfare for the student community. And I think that book really laid out very well on how you start from scratch, but really kind of take your vision forth and then try to develop something that's with the eventual purpose of adding meaning to society. So and it also had some great topics about, I think, just how we can use technology to bring about change. So it talked about like artificial intelligence and how we're bringing it in into I think real world applications, and should we be concerned about robots taking over the world, or rather should we see it as a tool that we can use to our advantage, to kind of aid with the services or the products that we are providing.
Yeah. So who's your favorite cartoon character?
So have you heard of the Powerpuff Girls?
No, I have
Yeah.
not.
That's the Powerpuff Girls is a series that used to run on the Cartoon Network, probably I think around 2000s, the early part of the last decade. And yeah, there's a character, Blossom, that I really relate with. Like she was like the leader, and then she used to just like, fly over to places and plan these missions out. I thought it was really cool.
That's fun. That's great. So imagine that you can go to the Olympics and compete in any
Hmm.
sport. What do you choose?
I think table tennis would be great because when I was back in high school, I was actually on our school's team. I was representing our country at some point as well. So I did get to see some of the players in action who are now representing, for instance, India at the Olympics, and yeah, that would be great to do that one day.
Oh man. Yeah, it seems like you were close to having a completely different career. You could have been doing
Right?
table tennis in
Yeah, yeah.
Tokyo
I
this
saw
year.
her play at Tokyo, and I literally thought to myself, I was like, my team was competing with her team, like, so many years back. I know her.
That's so cool. That's so cool. All right. So if you could live for a week as any person in history, who would it be?
Sally Ride, for sure. She's the first American woman to go to space. And yeah, if I could just live that part where she went into space and, saw our Earth for the first time, I think that would be great.
Right on. Right on. All right. Well, thanks very much, Nishi, for joining us for the Talon Talks podcast.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Alan. I think it's been fantastic talking with you, and hope this adds value to people who are listening to it.
Of course. All right. Thanks so much.